This talk will review the status of US fisheries as of the end of the year 2010. Aloha, I'm Dr. Paul Bienfang. I'm with the Oceanography Department at the University of Hawaii, Manoa. On a global perspective, we get about 63% of our fish from the Pacific Ocean, about 25% from the Atlantic, about 10% from the Indian, and about 2% from the Mediterranean and Black Seas. But a review of world fisheries would be a pretty big bite for one sitting. So today we're just going to focus our attention on those fisheries that are under the jurisdiction of the United States. In order to do that, we'll need a little bit of a history lesson to understand the legislation that set up the regional focus for management of the U.S. fisheries, and to discuss the terminology that is used by fisheries experts to describe the status of the sustainability of the fisheries and how they report this information to Congress. In 1976, the U.S. Congress passed the Fisheries Management and Conservation Act, or as later amended, the Magnuson-Stevens Act, which became effective in 1977. This was later amended 20 years later by the Sustainable Fisheries Act and again by the Magnuson-Stevens Fisheries Conservation and Management Reauthorization Act in the year 2006. This act accomplished a number of things. Three are very important. First of all, it established the now famous 200-mile exclusive economic zone, or conservation zones. Importantly, this meant that the United States could exclude foreign fishing vessels from fishing within that 200-mile limit. It also established regional fisheries management councils composed of state and federal officials to manage the stocks within the various conservation zones within that jurisdiction. And by the way, it also mandated that these fisheries management councils cooperate with foreign countries on species called highly migratory species that spend only a portion of their lifespans within the 200-mile jurisdiction.
The Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act is the national law that sets parameters for the management of our fishery resources in the United States. The 10 national standards contained within the Act are the guidelines used by the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council when making fishery management decisions. These guiding principles mandate the use of the best scientific information available to prevent overfishing while achieving a harvest level that gives the greatest overall benefit to the nation, particularly with respect to food production and recreational opportunities, all while taking into account the protection of marine ecosystems. Using peer-reviewed science from multiple sources, the Gulf Council sets catch levels to allow for a productive annual harvest of fish while maintaining healthy stocks for years to come. The 10 national standards of fishery management require the Council to consider the importance of fishery resources to fishing communities to ensure fair and continued participation in the fishery. The Council works to balance competing interests in the fishery by establishing an equitable allocation of the resource. To do this, the Council must consider the social and economic impacts of fisheries regulations. Staff economists and anthropologists analyze the potential results of proposed management measures. Public input and participation in the development of regulations is highly encouraged at every step of the process. The Gulf Council and the national standards encourage safety at sea. Fishery management measures always consider and promote the health and safety of human lives on the open ocean so that we can enjoy the bounty of the sea for generations. The Gulf Council strives to maintain healthy fish stocks to ensure that productive fishing can continue into the future. To learn more about national fishery management standards and the Gulf of Mexico Fishery Management Council, visit us at www.gulfcouncil.org or find us on Facebook.
Clearly, different regions have different environments, have different fish stocks, are faced with different challenges, and they have a different group of experts that know the most about those fishery stocks and how they should best be managed. This is the rationale behind the establishment of multiple regional focuses on the various fisheries. The fisheries management councils have the responsibility to do a number of things. They must perform assessments of the stocks within their region. They must make decisions regarding the best way to manage those stocks. They must establish catch limits for those stocks, and they must produce annual reports to Congress regarding the success or failure of the sustainable management of the fisheries within their region. And it is from those reports that we get the information that we're going to be reviewing today. This is where we come in. The terminology is quite important. The stocks are categorized under three principal subheadings. One is stocks that are determined to be not overfished. The second is stocks which are determined to be subject to overfishing. Subject to overfishing means they are being harvested at a rate that is too high to be sustainable and that the harvesting must be decreased. The third category is overfished, and this means that the biomass levels of that stock have been determined to be too low and actions must be taken to rebuild them. We're going to review 7 of these regional fisheries management councils, so let's get started. We'll start with the status for the regions as of 2010. Let's start with the Northeast region. This consists of 2 fisheries management councils, the New England and the Mid-Atlantic. It contains 50 stocks or stock complexes that are managed by fisheries management councils. 24 of these were found to be not overfished, 10 were found to be subject to overfishing, and 16 were described as being overfished. The Southeast region contains 172 stocks or complexes that are managed by 3 fisheries management councils, the South Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean. Of these 172 stocks, 140 were found to be not overfished, 18 were subject to overfishing, and 14 of the stocks were described as overfished. The Southwest region contains 19 stocks or complexes that are managed by 2 fisheries management councils, the Pacific and the Western Pacific Fisheries Management Council. Of these, 16 of the 19 stocks or complexes that are managed, 16 were found to be not overfished, 3 were subject to overfishing, and none of the stocks were described as being overfished. The Northwest region contains 159 stocks or complexes that are managed by 2 fisheries management councils, the Pacific and the Western Pacific. 152 stocks were found to be not overfished. None of the stocks appeared to be subject to overfishing, and 7 stocks were described as overfished. The Pacific Islands region consists of the Pacific and Western Pacific Fisheries Management Council. It contains 50 stocks or complexes that are managed by National Marine Fisheries Service and the Western Pacific Fisheries Management Council. Of these 50 stocks, 47 were not overfished, 2 stocks were subject to overfishing, and 1 stock is described as overfished. The huge Alaska region contains 63 stocks or complexes that are managed by 6 separate fisheries management plans. 61 stocks are found to be not overfished. No stocks were subject to overfishing, and 2 stocks were described as being in an overfished condition. Lastly, the group called the Atlantic highly migratory species are comprised within 1 fisheries management plan, and it contains 24 stocks or complexes. Of these 24, 7 stocks were found to be not overfished, 9 were subject to overfishing, and 8 stocks were described as overfished. So let's summarize what we have discussed so far. For the end of the year, 2010, the National Marine Fisheries Service reviewed the status of 528 fish stocks or complexes that were contained within 46 different fisheries management plans. Though I can't go into it here, there are also a number of stocks that have or are in a state of being rebuilt, and that is a separate process that is also evaluated in these annual reports to Congress. More than likely, all this is better news than you might have expected in light of the media and or internet rhetoric that you're constantly bombarded with. The fisheries under the U.S. jurisdiction are among some of the best managed in the world, and they are reported to the U.S. Congress on an annual basis. The reports come out within 6 months of the end of the calendar year. What follows is the information from which these statistics came from, so that you can go and validate these figures and on an annual basis check to see the progress of the sustainability of U.S. fisheries on your own.